The Highline Racing League returns to Richmond. Short track action is back for season 18, and it's a great time for the Westlake Royal Building Products Premier Series to head back to Virginia for our first heat racing event of the campaign. Welcome to the Richmond Raceway as season 18 continues for its fourth race of the campaign. Qualifying just concluded, and for the first time tonight, our heat format will come into its procedure. For the first time, Heat 1 on its way. With our fast times being set already, drivers are preparing for a brand new style of qualifying to make it into our 25 driver main feature. Whether or not we'll have 25 in total in main is still to be officially confirmed. However, we know one thing: 10 drivers making in for each feature, of course, each heat. And now they're on the grid to open up this night. 20 laps per heat. Then we have our consolation race, which is going to be 30 laps, where one final driver can put their mark into the circuit and make it into our main 100-lap event. I'm David Kreutz, producing and commentating alongside Kenneth Bueno, who's been doing a great job, of course, producing and commentating for our eNASCAR Road to Pro division. And now, well, for the first time, Kenneth has a chance to see the likes of which at the front of the field in the Highline Racing League. We're just moments away from our first heat here starting, Kenneth. J.R. Houston, former champion Alan Kunman on the front row. And now, as we've seen practice come to a close here, how are you feeling heading back to Virginia, this time with the Xfinity cars looking to get the job done in a heat event?
I think it should be fun, and for the fact, David, that we've got heat racing for the first time proper this season, it should amplify the intensity and should possibly get these drivers a little used to that. We know that this is going to be the first of 3 short track races that we'll see across this calendar here in the Highline Racing League, so it should be fun. Richmond, known a lot for its physicality, but also known for being one of the bigger and actually one of the smaller short track on the calendar in the NASCAR schedule. So to add that, it should be a lot of fun, and with these cars that just recently got updated on iRacing yesterday, should make it for a fruitful challenge for the drivers this evening.
A load of unknowns before we head into Richmond. The iRacing update affecting these Xfinity cars. We saw in our previous broadcast on FTN, it definitely impacted drivers at a mini superspeedway, but a short track is practically the antithesis of just that. J.R. Houston has the pole and now 1 additional lap of pacing. Breaking down the format one more time. 10 drivers move on from each heat event to the main feature, and our last chance consolation will bring 1 driver the chance to make their way in as well. No cautions will be thrown in any of the heats or the consolation. However, cautions will count in our 100-lap main. 20 plus drivers are registered and looking for a chance to make it into the big event. Right now, a lot of our very usual contenders up at the head of the field. DJ Stagner, already a winner this season, and he would love to do it once again for the Swamp Motorsport crew, as 20 laps are due to begin momentarily now. JR was very close to coming away with the win last week. He was practically the fastest driver, all things considered, in those dying laps until he was involved with incident involving the man right behind him. Stagner and Houston might have something unsettled to leave on the track tonight. First heat is going to begin with JR on the inside, but Alan Kunman surging on the high side, looking to take the lead in those first 2 corners.
A good start by Houston, but he's going to get loose at the exit of turn 2. Here comes Kunman back on the outside. That'll be something we'll be watching for as the night progresses, David, especially with the sun out here at Richmond Raceway. You'll see a lot of drivers get loose in Houston again. Sideways, he's able to corral the race car and gives Kunman the easy advantage back to turn 1.
And it looks like now it's going to be JBL sandwiched between the 2 SP Sunset cars, teammates for Blacktop Racing. Jimmy McKee right now finds himself in 3rd. The 48 going to see his teammate get up to the race lead, and Allen right now with an easy advantage. This would be the pole position if he stays where he is for the next 17 laps. JR remains in 2nd, so not a major departure, and DJ Stagner's now ahead of 2 side-by-side battles. Tyler Snyder and Kendall Kerr with Corey Blevins and Mike Tellier. Terry and Kenny Brooks, the brothers with the Westlake and ASC partnerships respectively, run right now 9th and 10th, and of the drivers right now who are in the bubble battle, Lucas Lodato is the first driver on the outside looking in. He's in 11th here, would have to make it by one of the Brooks brothers if he wants to make it into this main event. Looks like no trouble for him to stay right behind 10th place. Now we'll see whether or not he can make a pass, as still side by side, Blevins and Mike Tellier remain.
And with that, in Lodato's position being in 11th, he should be able to get underneath Kenny Brooks here for 10th and that final transfer spot. This is, again, the first time that the heats are fully implemented on the short track side of things this season. So you're going to see a lot more of that intensity and more of high-stakes racing, because if you know you can't make it into the top 10 through the heats, you'll have to scrap through the LCQ. We know how dangerous the LCQs can get and how crazy they can specifically end up when you get to that checkered flag at the end of what's only going to be a pretty short last chance qualifying race. So for guys like Lodato and even further guys behind then in the top 15, top 20, they have to start to make their moves quick, because 20 laps at Richmond isn't exactly a long time. It's only 3/4 of a mile, so you blink of an eye and all of a sudden this basically heat is over. So Brooks, Kenny, and Terry into turn one. That battle's still up for grabs in P10.
And right now, it looks like Lucas Lodato is going to be giving pressure not only to Kenny Brooks, but it looks like Terry now slipping back, and it'll be side by side between the 23 and 54. Lucas Lodato right there, Matt Owens, Jason Harris, Seb Miller, and Scott Puckett all on looking. Miller started the season very strong. He was not able to make anything much of Kentucky, but now tonight he finds himself on the outside looking in as Scott Puckett has trouble and now is 15th and very far behind in the 36. Look up ahead, and Brooks now is going to be on the inside of Lucas Lodato. Looks like Lucas is going to follow his brother Kenny and try to make something work here to get into 10th and stick it there firmly. 9 laps, 10 out of 20, coming closer to the halfway point. It's still Alan Cunman leading. And then, of course, you have the battle here for the 10th position and last to avoid the last chance qualifier. Our most notable of our short track events last season, it was not Richmond, although we did venture there, and it was not Iowa either, perhaps the most familiar track or most similar by dimension, but it came down to our first trip to Kern County, a shorter track than this, as contact and the brothers will touch. Now it's going to be Kenny Brooks getting away, but Terry Brooks goes for a 360 spin. He's going to be sent to the last chance qualifier.
And again, in this heat format, no cautions are thrown in any of these races until you get to the main. So for Brooks, who suffers that spin, goes hard into the outside wall, he's going to really have to pick things up. And with no yellows, it means he is on the back foot very quickly. Already the leaders are going back to the front straightaway and into turn one, while Brooks is just getting his way into turn 3. So with that, all the distance grows. And for Brooks, a tough situation there, getting into his teammate for Esquire Express, and he may be bounced out to the LCQ early.
Bad news for the Westlake number 23, at least for the time being. It looks like Kenny Brooks has been able to hang on for a position, but Lucas Lodato, he's not going to be taking any prisoners here, nor holding them. He finds himself now above the cut line, and with Jason Harris more than a second behind, it looks like no real threat further on back. For the drivers who started inside the top 10, their biggest incentive to remain calm is the fact that one piece of contact, just like what Terry Brooks experienced, could send them falling back and could send them into jeopardy. You don't want to be in that last chance qualifier. Unless you're somewhat of a racing thrill seeker, there's no real reason to desire being in a position where only one driver advances, rather than a very comfortable spot where 10 drivers can make it in. And that's the reason now everyone's single file, and even if some changes were made from the starting grid, there's no real aggression being shown. Corey Blevins down and under on Mike Tellier. Last time we did the heat format with the next gens, not the Xfinity cars nor Gen 4, it was at Bristol. That was Corey Blevins' one and only career victory, and he was able to get the job done. He was dominant in the main feature and showed that speed in the heats first. Right now, Corey finds himself fighting for the 7th position. It looks like he's got the advantage over Mike Tellier, and the Mountain Dew machine, that Chevy Camaro, pulls away off the corner exit to make it up to the high side once again. Corey right now, of course, getting himself accustomed to this track as everyone else is. You can see the rubber being laid down, the tire marks throughout the track, some of which from that incident with Terry Brooks, others of which just drivers getting a little bit loose out of the corners. It's Kenny Brooks right now battling against Lucas Lodato, but not expecting much here as we come now with just about 5 laps to go.
Yeah, this one already ending it. In any case, David, you're looking at a game of balance, right, with what you just mentioned about potential mistakes falling you outside of the top 10 and pushing you into that LCQ territory. It's just about whether you really want to push the issue on cars ahead or behind you, or whether you just are content with rolling where you are. We look at the battle for the lead in this heat with about 2 laps to go. Cutman and Houston, while they're nose to tail with each other, this will only decide where they start in the main race, but they do not want to get a little bit too risky, because then again, that one mistake could bounce them out into another race that they'll have to run, and they probably don't want to do that. They want to wait and just have as much relaxation as possible. So it's all a game of balance, how you can go between racing with the competition and just being content with where you are. But when you know that you've got a lot of competitive race car drivers out there on the track, whether it's real or in the sim, that balance gets a little harder to obtain as everyone back in the top 5, top 10, you know, they're starting to signal themselves on and be in the right place. They're starting to hang in, cover the white flag.
And the white flag is out now for Alan Cunman, season 15 champion now, looking for what will be his first checkered flag in more than 2 seasons. This time he'll get it by way of a heat victory. If, of course, he hangs on. J.R. Houston remains a quarter of a second behind. No incentive really to lunge low. Still, he'll go high. Tries to get that momentum out of the front straightaway, but it'll be no use. And Alan Cunman will come to the checkered flag, winning the pole position and taking the checkered flag in Heat 1. Here from Richmond, it'll be Houston in second, Stagner in third, and Kendall Kerr fourth overall as drivers come across the line, and it looks like Kenny Brooks collects the final of 10 transfer spots. Sebastian Miller, Matt Owens, Jason Harris, Terry Brooks, Scott Puckett will all be sent to the last chance qualifier.
That was a good heat as well. And we'll look at heat number 2. A lot of big names in here. Scott Zellner, who's arguably the all-time greatest driver in the Highline Racing League. He'll be in third in this heat. Adam Bossy, a driver who's a former winner here at Richmond. He'll be back in the top 5. So plenty of big names here as well. Again, this will decide those orders in the main race and those who will be bounced out to the LCQ. So this one should be a lot of fun with Roberto Ramirez on the front row.
And Ramirez, looking for something to kickstart his season, has not been the best of starts. He found himself in the mid-20s in Kentucky before getting involved in a very late race incident. Dylan Poteet has experience with the shorter circuits. North Wilkesboro, season 15, he found himself a race winner. In addition, Phoenix, while not necessarily a short track, he got the job done there in season 16, and he seems to have a knack for figuring out tracks that are less than a mile in length or exactly a mile. So Dylan and Roberto going to be up in front. Dawson Buchanan, the notable rookie, starting there in the 4th spot, the highest position rookie in either heat when it comes to starting position. The battle will immediately be between Connor Holden and Matthew Rodriguez today to stay on transfer spots. The bubble battle, Connor's going to be above right now in 10th, and it looks like Hula Monkey has 2 drivers, the 01 and the 70, both of which are going to be on the outside looking in. We'll discuss more about the Hula Monkey team today as they bring special paint schemes to this event in Richmond. Up in front, one more pace lap here. Kenneth, we had those 20 laps, no yellow flags, and these drivers got to watch. You think there's any major takeaways that the drivers are thinking about before they get back to work here?
There probably are, and there are 2 of them, David. The first one is do not overcook the rear tires. 20 laps is still a decent run on these Goodyear Eagles, so you don't really want to fall off tire-wise and then maybe just get bounced out of the top 10 just based on tire wear alone. But number 2, don't push the issue too hard. You saw what happened with the Esquire Express cars, with Brooks getting into the outside wall and going for the spin. The last thing you want is to put yourself in a dangerous position that can take you out into the last chance qualifier. So be safe, don't wear out the tires, stay on track. Should give you a pretty clean heat number 2 to advance you right to the feature.
And looking to keep things clean, the VMware number 42, Roberto Ramirez, has the pole position for this heat. Now looking to lock up that outside pole. Let's see who gets the better jump, inside or out. Last heat, it was the outside. This time by Ramirez with the commanding start, and he will get himself up to the race lead with Scott Zellner immediately behind him. Maybe 1, 2, 3, and Dylan Poteet now on the high side trying to file in with Adam Bozzi just about a car length back. Now everyone's going to get single file at the front of the field. No trouble for the top 5 or 6, but clearly double file racing already. Scott Wheeler, Connor Holden, Matthew Rodriguez, and the Hornets' Nest is in the back, fighting to make it inside the top 10.
Well, this is all around the transfer spot. Matt Muir in the number 70 looking to get under Rodriguez. That will be for the transfer, but even then, right in front of them, Connor Holden, Scott Wheeler Jr., both of them trying to sort themselves out as we had a bit of smoke on the back straightaway, but everything seems to be mostly okay. So keep in mind that where Matthew Rodriguez is pretty dangerous. He'll try to look under Holden and make it 3 wide for position into turn 1. Backs out, he chirped over the radio, and now Wheeler goes for the spin. Murier almost involved, but Wheeler all by himself goes into the outside wall, and that one spin will take him out of Heat 2.
And a 2-time champion in big trouble now. Scott Wheeler, 15th and last after minor contact. Looks like no damage to speak of, but the track position is all that he lost. And that's the most important thing. Looks like loose, brief contact there with Rodriguez, and that was it. Unfortunately for Scott Wheeler, not much else that can be done but to putter around for these last few laps and hope something happens ahead. This will give Matt Muir the final transfer position. Derek Fowler and Dylan Barons, both rookie drivers in this series, 11 and 12, now find themselves just behind as Adam Bozzi battles the rookie of Dawson Buchanan for the 4th position.
Well, one thing I mentioned, David, right before we went green in the heat was not to overcook the tires, and what happened with Wheeler was just a simple self-spin. The rear tires lit up, car got out of shape, and he could not hang on to it by the time it already turned to the left side of the racetrack. Wheeler unfortunately going for the spin. Thankfully, no one else was involved, but like you said, Wheeler just has to putt around and wait for the LCQ at this point. No caution is going to be thrown to give him that blessing in disguise. Bossie and Buchanan in this hard-fought battle for P4. This has been a lot of fun to watch, both inside and middle lane at work, and obviously when you have the heat races in the future, we'll see the middle lane develop a little more. It isn't the preferential line here at Richmond, David, but you can make it work. Buchanan showing us just that.
That's one of Richmond's biggest strengths as a track. You can go all throughout the circuit and find something to your liking if you try hard enough. Bottom groove might be working out well for Buchanan, but for Adam Bozzi, he'll do something different and be a groove higher. You can go from the ceiling right by the wall all the way down to the apron and try to get the best out of the car, depending on your driving style, depending on maybe the equipment you're using. These Xfinity cars don't tend to go 3 wide here, at least voluntarily. But double file, very often, that's the way these drivers go at each other, and they can sustain it lap after lap. Buchanan has remained right down low on Adam Bozzi, but it looks like now another driver in the mix, and it looks like it's going to be your defending champ, Chad Winstead, side by side for the first time with Buchanan, and making major moves. Winstead now finds himself in the top 5 for the first time tonight, as he tries to hang tough here with the number 4 of Dawson Buchanan, and with them, looks like Casey Heschel coming through in 7th, really separating themselves from the fight beyond, as it looks like Matt Muir, who is right now in 10th, holds that position comfortably. The biggest battle is still from Bozzi down to Heschel here, 4th through 7th.
You got to be really careful, though, because as soon as you engage in a side-by-side battle, you'll start to accordion the field, and we'll see that happen, and it could get in Connor Holden, Matthew Rodriguez, and Matt Muir, who's currently holding on to that final transfer spot with about 9 laps to go. So be a little careful. Tread the waters a little lightly when you're trying to go side by side for position. But one thing about Chad Winstead is that he's got skill and he knows how to push around some race cars, and he's done exactly that, pushing inside the top 5, already catching up to Bossie. Use the outside lane on Buchanan, which is something we have not seen yet in either of the heat races. There he is lunging in turn 1. He's going to get on the inside for 4th place. So Winstead already on the pickup early, and again, this is going to matter, David, just because it is going to set up the running order for the feature race as long as they can stay there. But the battle for the lead, how about this? Scott Zellner.
Big contact, Adam Bozzi. Oh, disaster. Multiple drivers involved. Bozzi's going to head down to pit road immediately. Dawson Buchanan, more of the same. They hooked up the track, Kenneth. That will end both of their races, and now Dylan Barron sits inside the transfer spots.
It was a huge hit there. Just got the tap from behind by Casey. Heschel went out of shape, and unfortunately, Buchanan had nowhere to go. That car took flight at the exit of turn 4. It bunched up the field together. And yeah, you've got a bunch of drivers who were hanging in the back now all of a sudden with a viable shot at making it to the feature.
7 laps remaining here. Scott Wheeler is 6 laps down, but that could have been a saving grace if he still had himself a car worth driving for this heat. Now Dylan Barron's, the number 15, is going to be the final driver sitting inside of the transfer spots. Derek Fowler is going to be a half a second behind here, and if Darren can put something together, well, he's only now about a tenth of a second quicker per lap, but with 6 laps to go, that's enough time and enough speed to maybe give a chance that number 53 crew. Matt Muir continues to battle with Connor Holden here. They're the closest 2 drivers on the track now, and that's the consequence of course, going for those side-by-side battles, as you mentioned, Kenneth. Well, qualifying does matter. Making it out of the heats matters most. I think those 2 drivers perhaps a little carried away in the act there as they fought each other for high-up position. And so, now everyone begins to simmer down with 5 laps left. This is what it comes down to here. And all those who have survived looks to have a chance to advance. 12 drivers still on the lead lap. Ty Smith and Derek Fowler are the drivers on the outside looking in. And it looks like now Dylan Poteet coming up on Roberto Ramirez yet again.
Again, it's about just limiting the mistakes. These heat races aren't that long, so you get into contact with somebody and all of a sudden your chance at a feature spot locked in is pretty much diminished in that case, and that's exactly what we saw with Buchanan and company just racing a little aggressively and getting into each other. But now that that's happened, it should result in a little more strung out racing in these final laps. But these top 3, they've all been together, especially Ramirez and Zellner, so look for them in the final 2 laps. Might make something happen. Zellner still in control though.
Scott Zellner now with 2 laps to go, looking to seal the deal here. It looks like transfer battle has simmered down, and so the leaders are all that we're going to focus on. Looking for the outside pole, the number 2. Well, looking strong as always season after season, but Zellner yet to find a victory lane so far in this campaign. He was one of the faster drivers in the final laps of a race at Kentucky, but thanks to a caution cutting it short, did not have a chance to go out there and battle for the win. White flag now as it looks like Heat 2 is coming to a close, and Zellner tonight might have a chance to go out there and collect that first victory as he's rounding turns 3 and 4. Ramirez and Poteet left in the dust, and Scott Zellner gets the outside pole position, winning your second heat, and the transfer battle comes down to Dylan Barons and Derek Fowler as they get through turn 4 themselves. It looks like Barons, by a quarter of a second, will transfer into the main feature.
Great run by Barons, and that's exactly, David, just making use of the situation ahead. He had no business with the crash that happened in front, but because it happened, it just opened the door wide open for him to advance into that transfer spot and keep himself there. Obviously, Fowler gave him a little bit of a run for his money, but great job for Barons to hold on, and he's going to be in the feature. They'll have to watch this LCQ, an absolute brawl between 10 drivers for just several spots.
10 drivers, 1 position, according to our iRacing qualification system here. Now it's changed. 5 will make it. So, it will be the same as planned. 25 in the feature. That is what we are expecting. And so, Seb Miller, Derek Fowler, Matt Owens, and Ty Smith with Jason Harris right now sit above the cut. But we got a lot of strong drivers in this field who I think are due to change that. Adam Bozzi, Terry Brooks, Scott Wheeler. 3 drivers who were involved in the incident before they left the cut line in the heats respectively. I think right now they might be able to stomp through the field and make it back up there so long as they use these 30 laps wisely that are ahead of us.
Well, it is going to be a longer race compared to the heat, so a little bit more time that you can borrow when it comes down to making up positions. And another bit of good news for drivers like Bossy, Buchanan, and Scott Wheeler, who are going to be at the back half of this starting grid for the LCQ, is that there are only 10 drivers. You don't have as many drivers to work through, therefore you can make up position a little faster over the course of the race, and you can also be a little more patient giving the time. So keep in mind, Bossy, Buchanan, Wheeler, strong race cars, strong drivers. You can't fully count them out yet. A bit of a setback has pushed them here, but keep in mind, this is a longer LCQ. Lots of time for them to make that work up and try to get into the feature race. Top 5 are getting in.
Seb Miller perhaps has the biggest advantage right now, of course, with that track position. In our past two races, we saw, of course, drivers who started on the front row won the heat. So Miller hoping to keep that trend going here, as of course winning is the safest way to make it through. These drivers will line up 21st to 25th rather, so they're going to be at the tail end of the field regardless, but those few positions could make a difference. Of course, for Seb Miller right now, the difference is clear between making it and dropping out of the field. 5 drivers are going to go home tonight, no matter what, but 5 drivers have a chance to advance. It's 50-50 right now. The odds might not be in every driver's favor. Qualifying might make the biggest of differences here. Kenneth, we're due to go green this time by at a turns 3 and 4. The pace car will leave us, and it'll be Seb Miller getting a chance to bring us back to green.
A good chance for Miller to strut his stuff at the front of this field, especially given the fact that he is one of the rookies in this Highline Racing League. Him and Fowler on row number 1 into the restart zone. They see the green flag. LCQ underway from Richmond. Miller with a great run into turn 1. Fowler, Harris, and company behind, but they are stacking up from third on back, and contact. One car around and sideways. That's Scott Puckett in the 36. He'll go hard into the wall, and he'll be all the way at the back. Again, no caution as well in this LCQ, so lap 1 complete, and Puckett in trouble, along with Matt Owens, who just came out of pit road.
So both drivers going to be starting on the back foot. Doesn't mean the race is over. Puckett is still driving, although it looks like he got that front end damage initially. The car looks cosmetically mostly intact, and he's going to be sliding up the track here, so maybe that doesn't remain the same, but already Puckett going to be far behind. As for side-by-side, Scott Wheeler is there with Derek Fowler. Derek has fallen back substantially to start, but Seb Miller is hoping to keep that trend as true as it's been. He is still leading, while Fowler is back now to 7th and outside of the cut. One driver in the wall. Looks like that's going to be Matt Owens, and already bad to worse for the 11th.
It was a tough start there for Owens. Had to start on pit lane, let everyone by as he was coming out, and then just slapped the outside wall there. Big time trouble. But we were talking about Adam Bossy and Dawson Buchanan. Well, look at that. One incident, and then Derek Fowler getting loose off of turn 2 several laps ago. Give them 4th and 5th, the last 2 spots to transfer into the feature. Quick work, only 4 laps in.
And now 4 out of 30, top 5 drivers separated by 2 seconds. Adam Bozzi, the last of which, and he's battling again with Dawson Buchanan. Now, I would think for these positions, there's no real reason for him to perhaps make the move, try to go side by side, and right now, both drivers run comfortably, single file, with Scott Wheeler 0.4 of a second behind. If anything, I have a feeling that Scott Wheeler now is going to show exactly why he was in the position to make it inside of the top 10 of the heat previously. He's coming in quick. He is the fastest driver on the track that time by. He ran the fastest lap of the session, a 22.486. Substantially quicker than the drivers who are leading, such as Miller and Harris, but also faster than Bozzi and Buchanan. So, in all honesty, these drivers are going to be in trouble if Scott Wheeler can keep that pace up here, because he is electric getting away from the pack. It looks like now getting into his own rhythm is going to give Wheeler a real chance at making it again into the main. He's hoping not to sit on the sidelines, but he's got 2 very competitive drivers ahead of him, and Bozzi and Buchanan, who both expect not to miss the main show.
When they cross the line this time by, Wheeler again is a little over a 10th faster than Bossy and company right in front, so he's starting to push the issue. But again, it's a longer race this time in comparison to the heats. You've got an extra 10 laps to work with, so maybe you shouldn't push the issue all that much early on if you're Wheeler, but I think he's looking to gain that track position first and then play defense a little later. But one thing is certain, he is one of the faster cars on the racetrack in this top 5. He slowed down a little there as he's in the wake of Adam Bossy's number 27 Ford Mustang, but Wheeler is there. That battle for the transfer spot going to heat up quite quickly.
And now here comes Scott Wheeler. Gap between 2 drivers, 13/100ths of a second. And it continues to diminish here as the number 27 of Bozzi has no choice but to stay right behind Dawson Buchanan. Top 5 right now, comfortable running single file. Wheeler will be anything but, as there's only 21 laps to go now. Same length as our heat races when we get to the stripe next time by. And it looks like this is do or die action. Matt Owens is the first retiree so far, so he's going to hang up his number 11 team and put them back on the shelf for next week when we go racing once again. Scott Puckett is still driving in ninth, but he's at risk of going one lap down. He's at the end of the back straightaway while drivers enter out of turn 2. Wheeler is caught up now to Adam Bossi. That's not in question at all, but now the question becomes, where can he find the groove to maybe go around? Will he have to lunge down to the bottom? Would he have to go up top? It looks like right now Wheeler is going to lie back a bit once again and try to find the proper way to execute this pass as Bossi looks again on Dawson Buchanan, and maybe now Adam knows the signal's in for him to try a little bit harder in making it around Buchanan for 4th.
Well, when you're in that dirty air, it can become very hard to track the same line as that car in front. Obviously, with these Xfinity Series cars, it's a little less exacerbated compared to, let's say, the next-gen cars with that underlining diffuser that can take up a lot of turbulent air in the back end of a race car. Wheeler may have to experiment a little bit. He is a tiny bit faster on the inside lane, but as he's come up close to Bossi, he's around equalized or slowed in comparison to those. So maybe we'll start to use that middle lane a little more. Try to find some grip on those higher lanes. The rubber was put down a lot during the first 2 heat races, and with the track temperature as hot as it is right now at about 87 degrees, they're still looking at a pretty cooking track temperature to where you can experiment with those higher lanes, find some of that clean track, and get some extra grip to get a better way around the corner. But he's slower again in comparison to Bossi. Still a little tough for Wheeler to get around, as everyone trying to get around Scott Puckett is going to go a lap down here. So you'll see how everyone fares on the outside, but it will get really tough. Puckett getting close to the drivers around him, and this may help Wheeler get to the position.
Everyone going to have to go high side or low around Scott Puckett and Anstey, but we all make it through with no trouble. Of course, no yellow flag's going to fly regardless, and Jason Harris has been leading this group from second on back all throughout the race. Harris had particularly bad struggles in Heat 1 when it came to the pace. He just did not seem to have much in him. Regardless of that, from 11th to 13th in Heat 1, he has been able to make it up to second in this event, and it looks like that's exactly where he stayed since the beginning. However, Terry Brooks is now due to challenge, going low. The 23 is going to try to make it inside. Looks like he's got enough room, and that's going to move the 88 out the way. Now, 14 laps to go. If Jason continues to get past, he might be the driver sent out of this bubble, and he might be out on the other side of the cut line if Buchanan and Bossi are a little bit more aggressive. And you can see stacking up that accordion effect once again, Kenneth. Jason Harris now might be the target as he gets in the wall, brushes up, and now big trouble as they'll go 3 wide. Wheeler on the bottom, Bossi in the middle. One has to give. That's Bossi for now, and Scott Wheeler's inside the top 5.
That was such a tough situation for Bossi. Stuck in the middle, 3 wide at Richmond is a place you do not want to be. The good news is that Bossi should be able to get by Harris to be back in that transfer position in 5th place, but that was really dangerous. Harris in one fell swoop all of a sudden falls outside of the transfer, and he may be sent home by the time this one is over here at Richmond Raceway, and that was a big problem there for Harris. And when the field stacks up like that and you've got a couple drivers right in front and behind you, a little mistake can push you all the way back, and for Harris that's exactly what happened. Still some time to get across to Adam Bossi's machine, but with that mistake and how he hiccuped that right in front of the competition, it may be even tougher now with coming down to 10 laps to go just to catch up to 5th place.
And perhaps that's the biggest mistake made so far in the day for anyone. Not a dramatic incident by any means, but for Harris, he was safe and comfortable inside the 2nd spot. He was runner-up, and it looked like he was going to stay that way. No longer now, and the 88 is going to be far and away, further and further back from the cut line here. So, 6th place and losing time. Jason Harris is watching as Adam Bossi, Scott Wheeler, and Dawson Buchanan run through. Terry Brooks now has a second ahead of that battle for 3rd, and Sebastian Miller has made this heat look easy. Overall, he's led every lap, and he's had no contention around him. Terry Brooks might be slightly quicker, maybe 100th of a second per lap, but nowhere near enough to make a charge to go out there and win the last chance qualifier. 5 drivers will make it in to make it a 25 car field, and so 8 laps remaining here as we are due to settle the pack in. 23 laps out of 30. Maybe now Adam Bossi looks a little bit lower than Scott Wheeler, but definitely not for position now as Wheeler finds himself in the 5th position, no longer. He's in 4th, Bossi 5th, Jason Harris is in 6th, and To give him credit, the 88 is not quit just yet, but still losing a little bit of time.
He is, but for Bossy, his main objective is to keep Harris behind him. There's no worry about what Scott Wheeler does unless he makes a drastic mistake and self-spins like he did in the heat that he was in. But as long as Wheeler stays where he's at and stays put, if you're Bossy, you're looking in that rearview mirror. You do not want Harris to take you over, especially in those final laps, and bounce you out at the very last second, because that would be rather heartbreaking. But the good news here is that Bossy and company are starting to pull away a little bit on those straightaways. Harris can gain a little bit in the corner, but for the most part, not able to break through that barrier. So if you're Bossy, keep in mind where Harris is at all times. Don't worry about position in front of you unless it's an easy track position to gain. He'll be in this long line of, well, 3 cars, not really as long, but here he goes, giving himself some extra measure underneath Scott Wheeler that may back them up, and it may help Jason Harris get back into the transfer spot.
Now, side by side, the 27 of Bozzi. Will he choose to go for the pass? It looks like he does. Now it's going to be toe-to-toe. The 27 on the bottom, Wheeler right up top. Both drivers not looking to replicate the same mistake. This is going to slow them down, both. Jason Harris, I'm sure he knows this, and he's loving what he's seeing. Just got to wait and see if a mistake is made out of it. Very close. No contact, but it looks like now Bozzi going to have to back off again. Scott Wheeler better run down the back straightaway and near clear as he'll come across the stripe again. Very close to contact. It looks like that entire lap. This is an antsy position to be in, and Bozzi backs off once more. No use in getting so close and risking the chance of contact there. So once again, 4th and 5th, Wheeler and Bozzi alike, with Jason Harris 6th. That might have been the last chance the 88 had to make it through, unless Bozzi goes for the pass again. It looks like they're going to be single file and tightened up once more as they come across the line to make it 2 laps remaining. 29 laps in out of 30. Miller has led all of which to this point.
And for Bossy here, even though he's going to be in the final transfer spot, he may just have the biggest challenge he has faced all season long. He's going to have probably the worst start of the season as of right now. He started 15th at Daytona, 7th at Kentucky, or Nashville Superspeedway rather, several weeks ago. He did not race at Kentucky Speedway, but this will be probably the biggest move that Bossy has to make through the field as the white flag is out, and Miller looks to be cruising to this LCQW.
And that he is. Sebastian Miller dominant today. He got the launch on the inside groove in this last chance qualifier, and he dominated indeed. Checkered flags out for Seb Miller, winning the last chance qualifier and bringing with him Terry Brooks in second, Dawson Buchanan, Scott Wheeler, and Adam Bozzi, the final driver to make it in, sending home Jason Harris, Derek Fowler, Ty Smith, Scott Puckett, and Matt Owens. 5 drivers who don't make it into the field as 25 advance for your feature race here in Richmond. The field is put together, and it's about time you get to know your starting grid from top to bottom as drivers get ready for our 100-lap main event. Taking a look trackside again, it's going to be Alan Cummins and Scott Zellner, your front row. Let's take a look from there. The starting grid, the number 8 and 2, 1st and 2nd. And then you got 3rd place in J.R. Houston. Roberto Ramirez is going to be in 4th. DJ Stagner 5th. And then Dylan Poteet 6th. Ken Luker 7th. 8th is Chad Winstead. 9th, Jimmy McKee. Casey Heschel concludes the top 10, Kenneth.
And then a pair of drivers who finished 6th in their respective heats. Tyler Snyder in the 87 inside of row 6 with Matthew Rodriguez on the outside. Corey Blevins in the 24 lines up 13th for this feature race with Connor Holden on the outside in the 81 machine. Mike Tellier is inside the top 15 with Matt Muir in the 70 on his outside. That'll be row number 8 behind them. Lucas Lodato in the number 7 in 17th. Colton Gardner 18th place before you find those last 2 in the top 20. Kenny Brooks, who finished 10th in his heat, and Dylan Berenz rounding out the top 20.
Then you got Seb Miller, Terry Brooks, Dawson Buchanan, Scott Wheeler, Adam Bozzi. The final drivers of which made it in through that last chance qualifier. Miller winning the last chance qualifier, and Bozzi the final driver in on the cut line. Looks like one heading to the tail end of the field there, and one of the many in the SP Designs paint scheme. So if you take a look back, looks like one driver beyond Adam Bozzi will be Number 48, Jimmy McKee taking an end-of-line penalty. So, we do have some penalties assessed after our race in Kentucky, the most harsh of which was a driver who is not here today. However, discussing penalties once again, playing a major role. So for Jimmy McKee tonight, the number 48 EOL penalty for a choose cone violation. And last of which, Tyler Hampton, he is going to be given an EOL when he returns. Matt Owens, he did not make the main feature, so his end of line will not be awarded either. Michael Deitch, following multiple incidents at Kentucky, removed from the Highline Racing League as a whole. And so, end of line penalties and one full-on ban. Overall, end of line only going to be given to one driver today, Jimmy McKee, as he made it into the feature race. Rest of the penalties will be held over for next week's race. Drivers disconnecting now from their last chance qualifier session. 5 drivers going home, but tonight, of course, Alan Kunman getting a chance to lead the 25. That made it. Green flags out from Richmond, and Kunman going to bring him through on the high side, confident as ever, as the number 8 takes the race lead. Zellner behind, Roberto Ramirez right there with, and it's 2x2 to open up the race further on back. Everyone goes through cleanly in the opening turns.
We saw J.R. Houston almost take a peek 3 wide at the entry of turn 1. On the first lap, he'll wiggle his Supra sideways. He saves it. Ramirez on the outside with Stagner right behind. We saw Houston do this plentiful in the first heat of the race. Line up the rear tires, is going to do it again. He might get split 3 wide. He doesn't, but Houston cooking the tires early on lap 2, looking for third, and Ramirez takes it back.
Let's see now what Roberto Ramirez can do. Getting up inside of the podium once more. The 42 looked rather strong in that heat event, and it looks like once again he's bringing the pace back to the front of the field. J.R. Houston P4, DJ Stagner still going to occupy the 5th spot. You have Dylan Poteet, Kendall Kerr running strong after a solid result, and the 81 of Connor Holden coming up from what was 14th up to 10th, so he's gained multiple positions to this point. Holden's going to be one of those early movers. Let's see what he can do with that momentum here. Some drivers perhaps going a little bit more aggressive, and we talked about how important the tires were, and even those 20 and 30 lap stints. There are 100 laps on the table today. I can't imagine these drivers want to burn through their stuff so quick, but for those who started further on back, they're going to be more desperate to make up those positions, and you might see a different attitude from them who are all 2x2 trying to make something happen. Right now, Matt Muir, Lucas Lodano further on back. Lodano able to make it into this main feature as well, although he did have some troubles with contact involving Kenny and Terry Brooks alike. Looks like he's still here as we look up to the middle of the field. Single file now, everyone is in line from Allen coming on back except one challenger. There's Scott Zellner.
Zellner looking down to the inside. He's going to try and get there. Caution flag is out. Big crash with Colton Gardner and Mike Tellier. They seem to be involved in this one at the back of the field. Something might have happened there entering turn 1, and it began with Gardner, I think, slowing up, Tellier getting into him, and all of a sudden you have our first yellow flown at lap 7.
A very early yellow flag, and yup, Tellier contact with Colton Gardner, sending both of which up the track, and upstairs they went into turns 1 and 2. Yellow flag is going to fly as a result. Looks like nobody else is getting involved in minor damage for the both of which. Nevertheless, 94 laps remaining. First yellow flag of the day. 7 laps in out of 100 here. Drivers get back on the move. Looks like they both should be able to continue. Maybe some back-end damage for Gardner, but otherwise shouldn't be anything too concerning. The field will get put back together as we get ready to go at it again, and we should be restarting at about lap 10 or 11 here, and nobody else decides to go down a pit road. It looks like everyone stays out on track, and namely Scott Zellner as our new race leader.
Great move by Zellner on the inside to get the best of Kunman. And the good news for those involved in that incident, we know that Gardner may spend a bit of time on pit road, but like we talked about, this track is one of the smaller ones on the circuit, so we won't have aerodynamics play a big factor in it. As long as the engine is still on it, as long as the tires are still on the race car and the suspension isn't bent up, you're going to be looking at a car that can run laps around Richmond, and especially at a short track where a lot of attrition takes place and a lot of cautions can fly with drivers getting pretty intimate with contact and such. You can have a guy get damaged early like Gardner, stay on track, keep it clean for the rest of the way, and gain track position naturally. So Gardner will repair a bit of his Ford Mustang. He'll be back out there, and the same will be said for Mike Tellier. Both of them with a bit of damage, but they should continue on just fine.
And hopefully all remains solid for those two drivers. It didn't look like anything too major with regards to damage, so I don't think it'll be too concerning for either of which. Nevertheless, it'll be Scott Zellner, Alan Cummins, J.R. Houston, the top three as we get back to work again. Roberto Ramirez is going to be P4, and then DJ Stagner concludes the top five. Familiar faces at the head of the field, and it looks like that's the way things are going to remain for the remainder, of course, of the night here. 92 laps to go after our 70 laps of heat racing. Smaller field than what we've seen. 30 drivers registered, 25 making it to the main regardless. So this is our smallest race overall. The registration this season in the Highline Racing League has been fantastic. 30 plus drivers have registered for every race to make an attempt, and more of the same tonight. Alan Cummins, though, of course, leads all of which, and we'll go back green again with 90 laps left on the docket here. Cummins didn't get the best of starts, it looks like, giving Zellner that chance to get the race lead. Let's see what he can do now, not as the control car, but instead watching on as Zellner takes the lead himself. Field is due to head green for our first restart of the night. Alan Cummins gonna watch as Scott Zellner grabs the gears and makes his way through to the start-to-finish line. First restart of the day. The number two's got the advantage, and it'll be side by side from there. Roberto Ramirez and Alan Cummins both alongside one another, but only briefly, as it looks like now Cummins gonna give up that position. Of course, Zellner's leading. Now they'll be coming to the runner-up spot. DJ Stagner on the high side there of Roberto Ramirez. 2 by 2 further on back as we get ourselves back into the green flag swing of things. Laps to go. Kenneth, of course, here with us, watching this event, has seen so far, alongside you, the viewer, that this race has come down in long part to incidents. Yellow flag this time going to fly for another caution to the back of the field. Take a look at this, and it looks like once again the caution will fly. And here's a look on back at what just occurred. Tail end of the field saw another wreck, it appears, and the caution is out. Colton Gardner just getting away from this one here. Kenneth, what just caused that?
Well, it looked like Lucas Lodato and Kendall Kerr made that contact in the rise up in the middle of turns 1 and 2. Looked like Lodato was holding his line. Kerr slipped up just a little bit, moved up high. They both locked bumpers front and rear, and it sends Kerr hard into the outside wall at the exit of turn 2. Lodato does lose a little bit of ground, but for the most part, Kendall Kerr on the short end of the stick getting the hard hit all of a sudden on pit road with a car that is toast 14 laps in.
Bad news for the driver, the 21. No fast repairs in this series, so that means, yeah, day's done. Nothing more that can happen here for Kendall Kerr. Second caution of the day, 15 laps in out of 100. A shame for the 21 crew who looked strong, making it into this feature race off the heats alone. That's one of the blacktop racing drivers out of this. Meanwhile, his teammate still is up there fighting for the race lead. But Cummins has dropped back into third. And now we have 3 manufacturers represented in the top 3. J.R. Houston's Toyota's up to second. Scott Zellner's still the leader. And Mike Tellier is coming back around the field here. It looks like collecting a lap, perhaps. And that he is up high on the 07 machine, going around the field to get back with the leaders. 86 laps to go here, and pit road has not been encountered by most drivers. It looks like there's no reason to go in so early and waste the sets of tire that are available to drivers here. So strategy is going to stay somewhat unified despite what's happened so far. And regarding tire sets, we do have a limit of 4 in this race. So minimal amount for a track like Richmond, where it does oftentimes matter how new your tires are. Track temperature today clear 69 Fahrenheit, and the track temp is only 78 degrees, so by no means is it a warm or slick track, but It's Richmond, and these short tracks will burn through tire no matter what. Relative humidity of 59% as well. That might, if any indication, bring more tire wear than anything else.
Yeah, but for the most part, when you've got 4 extra sets of tires on pit road waiting for you and only a 100-lap feature, you're not going to look at many trips down the lane. You may see 1 or 2, maybe many more, depending on if this race goes into overtime and how important tires are going to matter then if you're looking at a short-run pace car and short-run stints. But for the most part, if you can run 100 laps green here at Richmond with these cars, fuel may be a small concern, but it maybe could be brushed off to the side. Tires, though, you'll need them at least once or twice. So they have plentiful sets for them down pit road. They don't need to worry about losing all their tire sets unless they pit a bunch of times throughout this race, but we should not see that. What I wanted to point out, David, was J.R. Houston, the Toyota Supra, moving into second under Kunman on that last restart. It felt like he learned off of the initial start where he tried to make that bid for third and second, got loose on both attempts. This time had the car a little more controlled, less bobbly. Look at that, what it rewards him. He's in second place with a shot at Scott Zellner back to turn 1 on the restart.
And let's see now what the all-time winningest driver can do as J.R. Houston is looking for victory. Of course, to be denied at Kentucky with only 10 laps remaining, he was up there leading, battling against DJ Stagner. They both made contact. Eventually, Houston was the responsible driver for the final caution, which ended the race and handed the victory to Tyler Hampton. Nevertheless, I think now J.R. Houston knows that winning pace is here, and it's here to stay. So long as he brings out a good result here at Richmond, he might still remain in the championship battle, which we haven't talked all too much about so far. We'll get to that more after our restart here, but this will be your second of the day with 83 laps to go, and it'll be Scott Zellner, the 2 and the 20, with J.R. Houston up top, controlling as we go back green to Richmond. Scott gets the jump. J.R. Houston going to be left about a car length behind, and that's going to give DJ Stagner a chance here up high on Alan Kunman. Looks like DJ is going to be alone in that middle group for now. Maybe a few drivers trying to copy what he's done, but none as successful as DJ's been on the restart to now be side by side for third and pull away. DJ clear for position number 3. Pole sitter Kunman is going to fall out of the top 3 for the first time tonight, and as such, here comes Matthew Rodriguez and company. Looks like Dylan Poteet going to hold a few more at bay in that number 31, but the 0-1 Rodriguez is here, and alongside Connor holding the 81 alike, both drivers here seeing the caution out for the third time tonight. Back of the field it looks to be. Let's figure out what just caused it here, Kev.
It was Roberto Ramirez, car number 42, the Supra, getting touched by Scott Wheeler at the exit of turn 2. And it was just a harmless spin. Didn't get into contact with anyone, nor the inside and outside wall. So just maybe flat-spotted tires on Ramirez's machine, but that slight contact is enough to send you around. And at Richmond, it looks to be one of the simpler tracks when you look at how short it is and what it looks like, but there is a little bit of a transition from the banking in turns 1 and 2 onto that back straightaway. It's a little bit of a crest that you reach over, and with these cars that don't have as much downforce on the rear end of the machines, you can easily kick up the rear tires and get that car spinning. For Ramirez, it wasn't that, just a little help along the way by Wheeler.
And iRacing to determine what is and what is not a caution, so perhaps multiple drivers with incident points at the same time and one out of control. That is what made the difference between calling a caution or not calling a caution. And as such, Ramirez involved with Wheeler there, very minor, and both drivers will get away from it. Nevertheless, 79 laps to go now, and Scott Zellner is going to be your leader. The first quarter of this race has come and gone, admittedly littered with yellow flags so far, and it looks like tonight the cautions have been prevalent once again, as this is our third, bringing forth our third restart in just a moment's notice. Zellner looking good so far to maintain the race lead, and talking about the bigger movers so far, let's talk about those who have tried to jump up from outside of the top 10 and then maybe making a little bit further up. As we make into this main feature here, Dylan Poteet has made some moves, I think none further so far than a driver like Matthew Rodriguez. Overall qualifying scattered based on the heat system. However, 0-1 machine doing a real good job, and Connor Holden as well. We saw them both battling just before that restart came to a close.
And look at those drivers further back, David, that started outside of the top 20 but have weaved their way into the top 15. Both Dawson Buchanan and Adam Bossi. Remember, they were in that LCQ race fighting for their lives to transfer into this feature race. Well, they made it, but the caveat is they had to start at the very back of the field, especially Boss, who had to start as the tail-end driver of this field. He's already picked up 10 since the drop of the green flag, up to 15th, and Buchanan up 9 from 23rd up to 14th. So give them a lot of credit for all that they've had to deal with, being in the crash in their respective heat and then moving on to the LCQ, getting in a tough fight there and having to move up, and now making some decent progress in this feature race.
Still definitely more to come, I'd say, from both drivers. They seem to have top 10 overall pace based on their heat race and the last chance qualifier alike. No doubt they'll be contending until the job is done. Scott Wheeler as well, however, he's only going to be now, it looks like, just within the confines of the top 20. Take a look at Wheeler right now. He's made gains, but not to the same extreme mark. He's up to 18th right now, low of 25th, so overall, he's gotten himself up about 6 positions to this point. Still more to come, and after that incident with Ramirez, it does slow down his progress, but definitely another driver who's got the pace to go a few spots higher and maybe break into the top 10 if the chips fall in his favor. We're double file again, looking for our third restart here, and it will be Zellner and J.R. Houston, the same front row, looking to get this thing started once more.
And great racing from Zellner, being composed at the front of the field. Obviously, J.R. Houston has been one to lunge into the corners, give a scare to some guys, and make the passes down low, but Zellner on this inside line should have the advantage. But watch DJ Stagner, a lot of great moves right off of the restarts. He's that points leader in this series. Keep an eye on him inside row 2 for the restart.
Stagner remains low. He's going to be following Scott Zellner here for our third restart of the day. And now DJ's got track position, and it looks like it's ever growing as he's going to find himself toe-to-toe for second here with J.R. Houston. Leaders have once again gotten through these opening turns with ease. It's been more about the back half of the field than anything else, and that's where the problems have been found tonight. As you can see, the front straightaway littered with drivers here. Now it's going to be the 0-1 of Matthew Rodriguez beside Alan Kunman for fourth. Rodriguez has been on the up and up today, and once again, Hula Monkey up inside of the top 5. Now, for the team that we're talking about here, Hula Monkey, multiple drivers coming in with very similar paint schemes, and that's something we would like to address. The Highline Racing League has seen a lot of multiple themed cars. Last week, the Swamp Motorsports crew, we mentioned what happened with the family of Ty Smith and Connor Holden alike, but tonight it's going to be the 0-1 of Matthew Rodriguez, Mike Tellier, Matt Muir, and Robert Kenny, all 4 of which they've been changing their paint schemes week after week, but tonight it will be for a cause. The team has decided to, in addition to, of course, representing their team sponsors, spread awareness of the dangers of distracted driving. Now, most recently, a very notable incident regarding drunk driving occurred in Columbus, Ohio. Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew killed by a drunk driver last week, and in large part due to that incident coming into the airwaves, bringing once again attention to the issue of drunk driving all throughout the United States. And that's when it comes down to using the platform of the Highline Racing League for good, as we've seen throughout the year already. And this time the 0-1 of Rodriguez, you can see paws off paint scheme, and tonight raising awareness against drug driving as a whole. And it looks like tonight working out well for Matthew Rodriguez. His teammates are behind, such as Matt Muir, and you'll see, well, they might not be similar looking in color scheme anyway, the same message. And if we ride on board with Adam Bozzi, you'll get a better look at what's on the back end of these cars. Talk to text crash. You can see there a very, very, of course, notable incident happening just a few weeks ago. And of course, for the Hula Monkey team as a whole, noble cause to be fighting against, and great to see it here on the racetrack.
Beautiful messages of awareness, and distracted driving is, something that does take a lot of lives, whether it be in the United States or across the country, as some bobbles happen right in front of Adam Bozzi. And they're about 3 wide there with Corey Blevins and company, but great to see that message being spread across that entire Hula Monkey team, and just a demonstration that sim racing is a family, sim racing is also a place to be a platform for messages like this and to have your thoughts and prayers with the family after a loss like we've seen in this league before, and messages like that, distracted driving, or whether it be other PSAs that you can send that message with on your cars, send it on a broadcast as caution flag raises once again. Kenny Brooks, Roberto Ramirez involved in an incident off of turn 4, but to turn back on the Hula Monkey team, wonderful messages they have on their cars this week here at Richmond, and hopefully we continue to see some of that awareness being spread out more throughout the season.
So Roberto Ramirez looked to be the start of this one as he went sliding to turns 3 and 4. Let's take a look back with the 42 now for your 4th yellow flag of the day. 67 laps to go. Ramirez contact there with Kenny Brooks, and Brooks is going to drift, as does Ramirez. Both slide. Mike Tellier with minor contact, but both drivers get away unscathed. Maybe some tire spotting, but that seems to be the extent of the damage. So Ramirez, Kenny Brooks, very similar to what we saw in that heat with the same last names anyway, but a completely different incident as drivers now head down to pit road. Scott Zellner will be leading them down and in with J.R. Houston alike. And now as pit road gets busy again, let's see who makes their way out first, expecting 4 tires and fuel at the 3rd way marker. This one, 2-stop strategy might come into play with the cautions we've had and this early pit stop, as it looks like now out and on the way. DJ Stagner wins off pit road from Scott Zellner and company further back.
What a stop by DJ Stagner, 14.4, and that was a little longer than Scott Zellner and J.R. Houston's stop, but just his positioning and the way he was able to get onto his stall, perfect for the 64 of Stagner. But one thing I noticed, Alan Kunman in the 8 car staying out here at lap 36, which seems counterintuitive considering all of the things he was going through in the last stint, to where he was dropping back position after position. It felt like an anchor was towed onto the back of that Chevrolet Camaro, maybe in anticipation that another yellow will fly and he will have the better rubber for the midway portion and end of this race. But Kunman going to be the solo dolo driver on the old set of Goodyear Eagles this time.
Let's see whether or not that gamble pays off here. Old tires leading the field. It's not usually a good mix, but Allen going to be confident in what he's got here and maybe trying to stretch it a little bit longer, although I can't imagine this is the likeliest strategy to work out. Definitely going to take his chances here, seeing him fall back a few spots in the opening green flag run. So Cummins going to lead the way here, and with 2 laps to green, we'll head back at it at lap number 38. Overall, Alan Cummins here has a real good chance, of course, with respect to winning this event, if, of course, this goes right. But that's the big if. And he started this race on the pole position, of course, winning it from his opening heat. Now, if these old tires have several seconds of fall off per lap, you're going to easily see Stagner, Zellner, and J.R. Houston get away. If Cummins been managing them properly and maybe expecting this, that's a different story, although we didn't really keep an eye on whether or not Cummins was managing the tire to such a degree. It's unlikely it's going to be anything more than a gamble here before the midway point of the race to maybe see if there's any positive advantage of trying to do something so different.
Well, the only positive in this elected strategy for Cudman is that this race has been littered with caution flags. They have played the event. We haven't had a long green flag run take over in this race just yet. It could obviously change on the restart, but for Cudman, it's that ideology that, all right, we've seen so many yellows in this race, it probably wouldn't hurt to be on old tires because we'll go on a run that's maybe 5 to 10 laps long and then a yellow will fly again. So it will give a lot of opportunities for Cudman to hit pit road, get the fresher set of rubber. But again, that's a gamble. It's a risk that Cudman is willing to take at this juncture. How does it pay off? He will be the control car on the restart, but everyone else behind him hounding on fresh Goodyear Eagles.
Let's see now what Alan Cunman can do through the Geico restart zone. Surely gets the best jump of everyone, and neither the inside or outside crew able to keep up with Cunman, so that's a good start. Well, let's see what else he can do with it here. Stagner and J.R. Houston brush, and the 64 is going to go down under. J.R. Houston gets loose. Contact, oh, it's big. Lucas Lodato and company.
And a huge crash. Lodato at the heart of the incident. Looks like Tyler Snyder, also another car involved. Mike Tellier and others trying to get around the situation, but cold tires and a restart sometimes doesn't mix all too well. And for Lodato, at the center point of the incident, as everyone stacked up in front, and it was the 87 car of Tyler Snyder and Lodato being involved in the incident. Another yellow flag here with 10 laps shy of halfway.
This one going to involve Terry Brooks as well. Scott Wheeler brushes against the 87, and the drivers who came in from there, Mike Tellier got a piece as well. Roberto Ramirez, it looks like just barely able to come through. But at this point, oh, there was another incident after. It looks like Kenny Brooks went sliding, and he went with Dylan Barron. So, oh, this gets worse from there. Take a look back a few moments after the initial wreck, coming through turns 3 and 4. It looks like the 54 was going by with Dylan, and as they came through, 3 wide with Dawson Buchanan, Dylan just went up the track and hit Kenny Brooks. Not quite sure whether or not he was unaware of the 54 there or something else. Just like that, caution is out, and even an incident after the wreck occurred.
Yeah, it looked like for Dylan, he didn't see Brooks coming up right alongside him, nor was he expecting him to cut down on the racing line that much. Thought he was going to stay up high on the banking, but unfortunately, they both get collected. Obviously, good news is that they were at a slow speed. They didn't pick up that much damage, but you may want to be safe and come down pit road, and that's exactly what Kenny Brooks is doing. He'll come in with Corey Blevins, so a bit of drama right after the raise of the yellow flag. I'd say, though, this is positivity for Alan Kunman. He saw that yellow flag coming. He was there. He's on the old set of tires, but he's still in the race lead.
And that's about the best thing that could have happened for him. Now, Alan Kunman, of course, trying this old tire strategy. This reminds me, of course, if we're talking about Road to Pro, which, Kenneth, you're so often involved in the broadcast here on FTN Milwaukee this year. Ethan Lane at the Milwaukee Mile was not leading. It was Brian Mercurio who dominated the opening half of the race. He led 60-some laps. Ethan Lane, in the first caution today, decided to stay out on the circuit with older tire, about 20 to 30 laps older, and he led the remaining 40 laps because of how many cautions there were. It could happen again in a very similar fashion, so maybe Allen looking to take advantage of these yellow flags and use them as part of his strategy more than anything else.
And if there are any tracks that can give you that ability to stay out on older tires and make use of a ton of caution flags, it'll be the short tracks where you don't need a lot of speed nor momentum to carry around the corner. We see often at 1.5 mile or even 2 mile ovals where in turns 1 and 2, that old tire car is dust. Everyone breezes around them like they're standing still. But on the short tracks where you have a little more braking involved and you kind of have to weave your way through the corners with trail braking and all that, a little more technique that you need to get in and out of the corners, it definitely helps when you have an older set of tires and a lot of short stints. And I was watching that race, the replay of it with Ethan Lane and Mercurio. Again, that strategy of staying out, as risky as it is, you get a caution-filled race in your hands, and you could get a guaranteed win because you won't have the time for all of those guys to catch up to you and make a race out of it.
Let's see now if Alan Kunman's master plan really goes to plan here. There's still 57 laps to go, and I can't imagine more than 2 to 3 laps would be all that's needed to send them off with a lead. Of course, he got a great restart. Let's see if those jumps are consistent. Cold tires versus old tires. Now that's the battle at hand, and Allen looked to be the winner of round 1. Pace car is going to leave us once more. It's going to give Scott Zellner a chance on the inside again to be lockstep with the 8 this time, and if he is, it's going to be a completely different battleground. But again, Kunman, car length clear, and he's going to lead the field again with 56 laps to go, and oh, Scott Zellner going to dive deep. Not quite sure what that's going to come of it besides losing position, and Zellner's risk does not pay off. Instead, he gives J.R. Houston immediately second place.
Well, was stacking up everyone in the top 5, and that inside lane struggled to get going. They were working through the gears, but they lagged a little late. Zellner and Casey Heschel took a little while to get going. Zellner tried to make it all back up on the braking entry to turn 1, and he is still locked in this door-to-door battle with Connor Holden for the last spot on the podium. Kunman is still holding his ground, but here comes J.R. Houston. Crossover to the inside. He's got a nose in entering turn 1.
It was inevitable that the number 20 would have a chance to go for the race lead, and now with the old tires of Alan Cumming beginning to fade that much more, well, here you have it. JR's back in front. Mike Tellier going to disconnect after most recent incident. It looks like now Scott Zellner having a chance to slot down low for second, and a Swamp Motorsports drivers, Connor Holden and DJ Stagner, both are stacked up top as Matthew Rodriguez is looking for a little bit more than just the top 5. He'll have to watch on as Casey Heschel attacks these drivers first. Loose, Connor Holden almost gets up into his teammate again, but no trouble just yet for all the drivers in the mix here. The 81 of Connor Holden still remains just on the high side. Inside groove looks to be preferable through the corners again, and Casey Heschel now going to have a chance to lunge deeper on Connor Holden, but look at that. Alan Cumming, right in the middle, makes it 3 wide, coming down the back straight. Cumming's got to go somewhere, and someone's got to give. Looks like Cumming decided to go to the top side there, and that will not help out Connor Holden. But Connor just looks higher and higher, and that's where Alan Cumming continues to go.
Well, if you're any of the fresh tire cars in this battle, David, you got to tiptoe like Roddy Rich because Cudman is a slower car, and he's just doing damage control at this juncture of the race as no caution has flown here at halfway home. He may be split 3 wide. He is. Stagner on the inside, Holden up top. Cudman stuck in the middle. They'll make it work at the entry of turn 1 off of the front straightaway. But you got to be really careful for any of those drivers. Casey Heschel out of Misfit Mania making it work, and he slides into 3rd place.
Now Alan Cumming is really going to be swept up here. Almost a moving roadblock on the circuit. Matthew Rodriguez, Dylan Poteet also arriving to the scene, trying to lock themselves into the battle for the top 5, but no use just yet. Emma Ox in the chat room, including as well Intimidator, Say in chat room. Thank you all for stopping by. If you have favorite drivers, well, we'd love to hear some support for them. Queen City Racing getting some love right now. And for the Queen City, some of the best drivers in the field, of course, such as Adam Bazzi, trying to make some further moves up. Adam has gotten up into the 11th position right now, and alongside Hula Monkey Racing, QCR also running paint schemes to spread awareness for drunk driving. You can see Adam Bazzi and Chad Winstead together right now. They're going to be running 10th and 11th, both of which with special paint schemes for this event, and also both of which making some gains on this restart. It looks like up 3 so far for Adam Bazzi, and looking to continue making himself a top 10 contender, looking just ahead with some Blacktop Racing boys, Jimmy McKee and Alan Cumming. Same paint scheme, different number, and look at that. Looks like now McKee's got the advantage, and Alan Cumming is in danger of falling out of the top 10 so quickly his plan is falling out of favor.
It is, and he's going to need a yellow flag at some point. It has to be soon, or else he will lose so much position that he may even fall a lap down just because of how short this Richmond Raceway is and how slow he is in comparison to everyone else. If you want a bit of a reference to how slow Cudman is on the racetrack, his last lap was a 23 flat. Everyone else almost half a second faster around Richmond Raceway. So for Cudman on the older set of Goodyear Eagles, now 56 laps old, everyone else at 35 lap fresher tires, it is only going to be a steeper climb for Cudman, and a big gap to Winstead. All of a sudden diminished. Winstead is there. He's one of those drivers looking to rebound after last week's event at Kentucky, where he finished just inside the top 20. Winstead looking on Cudman, and this battle will be for 9th.
Now Alan Cumming going to try to hang tough with the number 1 machine. You can see right now coming right up on the backside, the number 1 of Chad Winstead, looking to get some momentum going in the number 1. And sort of a sarcastic comment that came out of last week's race at Kentucky. Chad Winstead said perhaps he wants the 34 to the 60 back, his old numbers. The championship defense so far with a brand new number 1, maybe not going to plan just yet, but of course a solid top 10 would be good for any driver, and for Chad Winstead to build momentum, that would be great. And right now, the number 1 machine goes right down low, going, of course, tonight, down to the inside groove. Looks to be preferable when it comes to being on the attack, and Alan Cumming with the old rubber just cannot hold on. Chad Winstead tonight, you can see there, stop the Tex, stop the Rex on the side of his number 1 machine, and it looks like now he's going to try to stop this battle from going any further. But Cumming's going to hang on to the high side there. Maybe he's got enough to maybe fight for the top 10 a little while longer. 42 laps to go is a long way for a driver who's with such a major disadvantage.
Well, this is great for Queen City Racing, as both Winstead and Bossy will be able to slide into the top 10. This is certainly a pickup, David, from last week's race at Kentucky. Lodato told us last week that QCR was in shambles at Kentucky because Adam and Jacob were both out, and then Chad and Lucas were both racing through sickness. They were short-handed in that race over in Sparta, Kentucky. So safe to say a little more number this time at Richmond Raceway, trying to get things settled. The Cunman still looking to survive. Now it's Matt Muir on the outside, or the inside rather, in the number 12 spot, that Toyota Supra looking down low. But Queen City Racing, much more numbers, much better positioning here after halfway home.
62 laps in out of 100, beyond halfway here. Winstead holding the fort in 9th. Adam Bozzi now up into 10th, and it looks like still Alan Cummin becoming a free and easy pass for drivers so long as they can keep themselves together and not have any tire troubles of their own. Alan decides to go to the inside here on Adam Bozzi and might try to fight back once again. See what Adam can do about that as the battle for lead has simmered down. It looks like J.R. Houston has been in control with it relative ease, at least to open up the night. The battles are now going to be a little bit more contentious further back. Cunman contact with Adam Bozzi. That's going to give Scott Wheeler and Matt Muir a chance to get by the number 8 and make it even a little bit more simple. There goes Scott Wheeler to the inside on Matt Muir and opening the door for more positions to lose. Alan Cummin, it's the same song, different verse at this rate. Up in front of the field, a similar battle going on that's going to be as contentious. Looks like still all eyes on what's going on there with Scott Wheeler and company as these drivers continue to go at each other. Alan Cummin has gotten away ever so slightly.
Well, if we're making music puns, then Alan Cudman is a bit out of tune. He's trying to get that back sorted as Wheeler and Muir go side by side. And every passing battle, David, is going to attract more cars to the grouping, and one of those that was attracted to the smell, Dawson Buchanan, car number 4, that Toyota Supra who we mentioned earlier in this show, started 23rd in the race after having to go through that LCQ race just to get into this feature, advancing through that top 5. Well, he's still looking just like Adam Bozzi to move up inside the top 15 and maybe a big crack into the top 10. So as they were going side by side, Wheeler and Muir, Buchanan was brought in. Corey Blevins is still a ways back, but he can finally gain some ground if they start to tally it up and get a bit more physical here with less than 40 laps to go.
And right now, the physicality might extend to the race lead. Last few laps, we're looking at the deficit between J.R. Houston and Scott Zellner, slowly but surely getting a little bit smaller. It looks like over the past 4 laps, Zellner has been able to make through 0.2 of a second in his favor. Across the line here for lap number 67, it looks like continuing those gains. This time he gains 0.2 in just a lap, and it looks like the gap has halved in only 3 circuits here in Richmond. Scott Zellner is making it very apparent that he is not done yet, trying to make his way around and getting into the picture for the race win once again. The all-time winningest driver here, Zellner, stands alone with more than a dozen victories to his name, and right now, like he's gonna level out once again within a half second. J.R. Houston, though, with the advantage that is ever so slightly diminished. 32 laps to go. Scott Zellner might have what it takes.
What you got to ask, though, is J.R. Houston reaching the cliff on his tires countless times throughout this race. We've seen him sideways, whether it's off of turn 2 or turn 4. Those rear tires aren't liking J.R. Houston's style of driving, and that catches up to you over a long run. Specifically now, lap 35 and onwards is where those tires reaches that cliff, and if you end up wearing one tire more than the other, that car is going to be a handful to drive. So for Scott Zellner, who's been a little more conservative over this run, it's helped him to catch up to J.R. Houston and may make this a fight with under 30 laps to go. Zellner's last win in this series was last season, season 17, and it was at a short track, Dover Motor Speedway, back in late April. So one thing that we know about Zellner is that he's one of the greatest in this series, but he knows his way around the short track. He knows how to win at this discipline of racing. So keep an eye on car number 2. He's catching up little by little with each passing lap.
Zellner, right now, maybe for all his successes, the only fault right now be perhaps that he's going to push himself to burning his tires out, knowing that he was gaining, because the gap has gone back again to 85 hundredths of a second, which is about where he started, give or take 10 laps ago in his pursuit of J.R. Houston. Perhaps now the equipment he's got is getting a little bit more wear and tear lap after lap as a result of him going a little bit more aggressive in those past few circuits. 0.7 of a second now, rushing down the back straightaway. While it's fluctuating, it's clear that both Houston and Zellner have been some of the most careful with their tire. I think Zellner was definitely more patient to this point. Now he just has to hone in on what's made him so successful in gaining tenths and what he has to do to cut back on losing those tenths of a second. The battle for third is also rather intense. Casey Heschel could have himself a podium finish here, or DJ Stagner, championship leader, could find himself again in the top three. Overall, Zellner has been remarkably consistent this season with high-level performances. What came down to at Kentucky was he was in contention for the win, and much like J.R. Houston, but on the flip side of the story, he made contact with the 20 and lost that opportunity when all was said and done. Daytona, one of the weakest performances overall for Stagner. Regardless of finish, he was only able to come home with a top 10 finish, which was a 7th spot, I believe, overall, getting the job done for a top 10, while his teammate, Swamp Motorsports' Ty Smith, got the win. Stagner, the previous 2 seasons, won the season opener, but he got it back in Nashville, and so doesn't have to worry about that first win. I think right now his focus is getting in the podium here, but Casey Heschel doing a great job defending lap after lap.
And as long as he can end up on the podium or even gain another spot on Zellner and company, it does help you points-wise. And in a season that's all about consistency and it rewards that discipline for guys like Stagner, even with the win that he's got in Nashville, as long as he can clock in decent finishes, even at tracks where he doesn't seem as strong at, it will help you in an overall championship pursuit. And look at this, making quick work of Casey Heschel down to the inside. Stagner will have control of third, but he's got the tall task of catching up, but not anymore. Caution flag waves. Matt Muir and Corey Blevins involved in turns 3 and 4. Yellow is out with 22 laps to go.
It's been a long time coming. The yellow flag went away for some 30 laps, but it returns again. Take a look now with the 24 of Blevins. It looks like, of course, just up and in and sent back down the track. Contact with Matt Muir, which was light, ended up spinning the 24 around, and both shot out of the outside barrier of turn 4. And luckily, it looks like nobody else involved. Matt Muir parked on the track waiting a little while longer to get going again. And it looks like as he stood at a standstill, Corey Blevins got away once more. Yellow flag is out, and Muir heads down to pit road. So, another minor incident in regards to how many were involved there, Kenneth, but another crushing blow to a few who were running solid in this race.
Yeah, Muir was running inside the top 10, and this incident started and originated from turn 2, just getting loose at the crest that I mentioned earlier in this show, and then just hip-checking Corey Blevins on the way up the track and overcorrecting. A brutal hit for both of those drivers, and we know Blevins was already involved in one incident on the back straightaway earlier in this race. So just insult to injury for car number 24, but this is going to be big. Trips down pit road for the main leaders. Scott Zellner, we know that he was in pursuit of the race lead. Can he take it at the exit of pit road? Jacks are down, and Chad Winstead out of nowhere on 2 tires gets the race lead off pit road.
Oh, how about that for the number 1, and the defending champ is back on top. Matter of fact, your last 2 champions, Season 17 champ Winstead and Season 16 champ Zellner, are due to line up alongside each other, drivers 1 and 2, positions 1 and 2, setting up for what could be a battle between the most experienced and the most accredited drivers in the field of recent history anyhow. Now, wow, Chad Winstead. That pit stop made all the difference, Kenneth, when it comes down to time. I think he took 2 tires. He was in his box for 8.8 seconds there. A clear difference of 6 seconds that gives him this track position. I think 2 tires is the way he went.
Right sides only for Chad Winstead. He didn't mind putting up the jacks on the left side of the race car. Winstead with the most gutsy strategy call we've seen since Kunman took no tires on one of our last cautions in this race. David, do you like this strategy? Winstead has been playing catch up all night long, he's got a chance to have the race lead with under 20 to go.
I'm not opposed to seeing it play out. And I think it's a much stronger call than maybe what Alan Cummin did in simply staying out on the track. Mind you, Alan's going to find himself 11th here, so not in the worst of positions, but overall, definitely not the best place to be for that number 8 car. I think now for Chad Winstead, this is a much better way to go about the method of sort of strategically undercutting. Yes, it's a yellow flag pit stop, so you can't go in at a different time, but doing something different like this with, yes, some new rubber, that's much stronger than just going in for a splash and go. I'm intrigued as to how it's going to play out. Is Winstead going to try to be hyper aggressive, or does he perhaps run with his own racing, go with his own flow? That approach, that demeanor, I think will make the difference above all else.
It definitely will, and you're right. It is a better call than what Alan Cunman executed earlier in this race, where no tires versus 2 tires, that makes a huge difference on the racetrack. For Winstead, he may be a little slower in some parts of the racetrack compared to those who have the 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, but for the most part, if you've got those fresh right sides, as long as you can keep a handle on your race car, just because the handling changes a little bit when you only put fresh tires on one side of the race car, he can have the race lead and keep control of it, even though those left side tires are a little more worn down than the fresh ones he put on the right side. So it's a much better call. Does he get the caution? Does he get the luck to keep the lead? We'll just find out.
Scott Zellner on the outside, but he's going to let 2 tires and Chad Winstead lead the field back to green. 17 laps to go here, and it's going to be J.R. Houston also looking on with DJ Stagner coming through. Oh, Houston loose once again. That gives the top 2 a quick breakaway, and Zellner advantageous into 3 and 4. Can he clear? Not yet. But out of turn 4, it's clear as day. Scott Zellner with an immediate advantage, and now a driver has buffer to serve against DJ Stagner and the like chasing him. Oh, J.R. Houston, major contact.
Trouble, turn 2, J.R. Houston up the racetrack.
Looks like Connor Holden and Casey Heschel as well with damage, and the yellow flag is out again.
For J.R. Houston, it was an attempted lunge to the inside on Stagner for 3rd, and that car was way out of shape as soon as he hit the entry of the corner. Got into Stagner, then Heschel goes up. The Misfit Mania cars, both of them involved in this incident, and then behind them, Connor Holden and several others, Roberto Ramirez, all of them getting some extra hits in there too. The yellow flag out with 14 laps to go, and Misfit Mania getting together, all starting with the former race leader of J.R. Houston, who led a good chunk of this race early.
And heartbreak for some of these drivers at the head of the field. For Houston, desperation in these last few laps going to prompt that. 15 laps to go here, so even less time than before. I think now it comes down to whether or not Scott Zellner can get away from DJ Stagner more than anything else. Winstead still remains in second here after that restart, but not a strong showing on those 2 tires, so I'm doubtful this is going to work out for the number 1 team. It looks like maybe a chance to hang on for a top 5 and hopefully a top 10 if all goes really astray. But for the podium, unless yellow flags continue back to back to back, not looking the best for Winstead.
Yeah, it is not. And you know, with 2 tires on that pit call, it was a smart decision. It was obviously a fruitful call, and he can still garner a top 3, a top 5 out of all of this and still be one of those top contending drivers at the end of this race, especially if we have more yellow flags and the field will equalize out on tires. But Scott Zellner, who has been one of the strongest cars all race long, if it's not J.R. Houston, Scott Zellner has that title, and for him to power outside of Winstead to get the race lead without any trouble and do it just before that caution came out. Beautiful stuff by Zellner, but the question is, how long can you hang on as this race continues to shrink in distance left until the checkered flag and you've got more yellows flying? The desperation kicks up. So for Zellner, this race is far from over, but this was a step in the right direction to take over the race lead quickly and efficiently. Zellner will have control of the next restart.
So now it's Scott Zellner having control. He'll only have some 11 laps to go to defend his race lead. Time running out. And looks like for Zellner, that might be to his advantage here. Yellow flags are going to fly only for a certain amount of time left. Remind you, Highline Racing League rule, only one green-white checkered attempt is allowed. So drivers, even if we go to that final yellow flag and push beyond our scheduled 100-lap feature, well, we're not going to have much time to push even further beyond that point. At a certain point, the checkered flag is going to fly no matter what these drivers would like to see. And I think for Scott Zellner, that's going to play into his favor here. He sees now the desperation for drivers like J.R. Houston, which ended up costing him big time. You also see DJ Stagner and Matthew Rodriguez. For Rodriguez, it will be a major opportunity for a win that he hasn't gotten in several seasons. We haven't seen a win out of him since before season 14, as a matter of fact. He's got a chance to still chase after that first tier with Highline Racing League action on FTN. He won the pole position season 15 in Daytona, but otherwise hasn't seen a lot of the checkered flag just yet. He's been quick today, maybe not the fastest on the track, but push comes to shove. Oftentimes, you're in a good position. It could be great if you're just waiting in the wings at the right time. Winstead is still in the front row here. Scott Zellner still right beside. Both drivers occupying such a good position, maybe one of which is bound to win. Let's see who gets to jump off the restart zone better here with 10 laps remaining. We go right back green. Zellner's got the edge, and a car length at that. He'll bring DJ Stagner right there with for the battle in second.
And here's Dylan Poteet, car number 31. That's Supra making his way down low. The two teal-colored cars making their way under Chad Winstead. But this race all in control by Zellner. Caution flag is out. Roberto Ramirez among those involved.
And it's going to be Connor Holden again and Colton Gardner for the second time tonight. Caution's out once more, and it looks like we're going to have some 5 laps at the most to decide our race winner. Take a look back again.
It just looked like 3 wide. Buchanan in the middle, Kunman on the outside, Roberto Ramirez in another peculiar position inside 3 wide with barely any space to spare. Gets into Buchanan, goes sideways, and then at the end tags Connor Holden, who gets that little jut of the inside wall, a hellacious hit for the 81 of Holden, and then gets Gardner involved at the very end, who had nowhere to go. Mind you, all 3 of these drivers, David, had been involved in incidents prior in tonight's race, so surely this one has hit them hard.
And you could see the 81 beyond crab walking could hardly limp into pit road. It looks like 2 tires were practically demobilized, and he ends up banging into the outside retainer for pit road. And it's an unfortunate way to end the race for the 81 team. And there's still a chance here for Swamp Motorsports to come away with what will be their 3rd win of the season, but the 81 will no longer be in contention for such an honor. Scott Zellner leading with 8 laps to go. DJ Stagner will start behind him. DJ with the best chance he's had all race long to win. Zellner, I would say, relatively speaking, in the same position. They are both at the end of the line here with track position, and they've both been away from all of the incidents and all of the damage. Wonderful races for both of which, but now it's time to see who will separate themselves and be the driver rather than a driver with a chance. We'll come back green, and I think with 5 laps to go, Kenneth, and there's always potential for a yellow flag. Short sprints have defined this race. If you had to take a pick, I figure I know your answer, but I'd still like to ask regardless, who do you think's got what it takes in a short run?
Are you assuming that I'm going with Scott Zellner on this one?
I have a good feeling about it.
Well, I'm actually not going to go with him. I'm going with DJ Stagner, the points leader, who has been there for most of the race. He's been inside the top 5 all night long, and he's shown some strength on these restarts, specifically prowess on those middle and higher lanes. As long as he can close off the pressure from whoever will be inside on road 2, specifically it might be either Chad Winstead or Dylan Poteet, as long as you can shut that down in the first several hundred feet until the entry of turn 1, you have a good shot at Zellner. Whether you have 3 laps left to go, you can be close enough to deal the bumper, but Stagner, as quick as he's been all race, specifically on the short run, might be able to beat Zellner to the line.
Stagner has proven time and time again he can succeed in any situation, whether it is start to finish green flag racing or a green-white checkered or two. I would say that perhaps his biggest successes in green-white checkers haven't come in the Highline Racing League, but have come on FTN before. A notable victory this season that he had with the green-white checkered Nashville SuperSpeedway, but not in the Highline Racing League, but his first trip there this year during the spring months. It was, of course, the Integrity Ignite Series on Monday nights, in which he was toe-to-toe with Blake Gordon for the first time all race long, and he won that race by making the final pass in the final turn on the final lap. Let's see whether or not DJ has what it takes to do that again. He's up against Scott Zellner, who has proven strong at these circuits before. In Season 15, while not the winner, Adam Bozzi came through with a checkered flag. Stagner was able to lead dozens of laps on the day and was up there fighting for the victory, even though it just couldn't come his way at the end of the checkered flag. Tonight, maybe a chance for some racing redemption, and of course, his first victory in his illustrious career this season. 4 laps remaining. Zellner gets the jump, and it's a car length plus. That's going to bring Chad Winstead up on DJ Stagner. Here we go again.
And Stagner way up high in the second lane. He may be able to clear Winstead at the exit of 2. He's got a shot at Zellner at the entry of turn 3. He'll stay up high. Winstead and Poteet in the tough end battle for 3rd place. But with several laps to go, Stagner is there. Zellner still in control of the race lead.
Scott Zellner's got the front of this field in his domain. It looks like now the number 64 is going to have a little bit more pressure from Chad Winstead, but nothing too massive. Contact in the further range of the field outside the top 5 now. Dylan Poteet, it's nothing major. Everyone keeps themselves intact. And so the lead battle comes down to these 2 drivers you're seeing with 2 laps remaining. Zellner low, Stagner taking the middle groove, and it looks like Scott ever so slightly getting away, but still 4 turns of opportunity for Stagner with the last lap in mind.
And Stagner trying to get the straightest exit out of turn 2 possible. That outside wall comes up quick. He's been entering high, arcing down low, and that's where he's been faster than Zellner across the speedway. White flag in the air. Stagner with one more chance at Zellner. Does he have enough in 3 and 4?
Now it's going to be DJ Stagner's last stand. He'll go to 3 and 4, but he was loose down the back straight, and that is all she wrote. Scott Zellner, the winningest driver in Highline Racing League history, does it again. Checkered flag for the number 2, winning from Richmond and sealing the deal after 100 short track laps of racing. Zellner tonight, one of the fastest all throughout, from flag to flag. Zellner made it happen, and tonight he'll lead 44 of 101 laps, nearly half of the race. He was the man on top of the board, but most importantly, he'll lead the last lap and collect the checkers.
And he's now, David, the 4th different winner this season, with Ty Smith, DJ Stagner, Tyler Hampton, and now Scott Zellner added to the list of winners in 2024 in this series. Boy, never in doubt with Scott Zellner, one of the faster cars all night long. Had a chance at J.R. Houston earlier in the race, but with everything that went down, Zellner made use of a wonderful restart to beat Chad Winstead, and from there on out, just textbook, holding off the pressure from Stagner to get his first win of season 18.
And continuing to burn the track down, it looks like going on a little bit of a moving tour here. Zellner continues the celebration all throughout the circuit, and rightfully so. It was a tricky race from beginning to end, and tonight, it might have not been the odds stacked against him, but instead, it was the drivers stacking themselves against each other, and eventually the number 2 team. Nevertheless, Scott Zellner back to the start-finish line. I think he's going to finish the celebration here and now. It's about time we take a look at your official race results before we get a comment from our race winner Scott Zellner and the rest of the podium tonight. Zellner will win from 2nd place DJ Stagner, and Chad Winstead comes home in 3rd with Matthew Rodriguez position number 4. It'll be Jimmy McKee in 5th and Alan Kunman then in 6th with Dylan Poteet P7, 8th to Casey Heschel. Kenny Brooks comes through in 9th, and Adam Bozzi rounds out the top 10, a former winner at this track with another solid finish in the bag.
Roberto Ramirez, despite everything he went through and some incidents along the way, the 42 car ends up 11th at the end of this race. Dawson Buchanan, who ended up in the LCQ, worked his way up from 23rd on the starting grid in the feature, ends up 12th place with Tyler Snyder right behind him in position number 13. Scott Wheeler Jr., another one of those drivers that made it through the LCQ, started penultimate position, ends up 14th with Corey Blevins inside the top 15. Colton Gardner got inside an incident early in this race, but rebounds to a top 16 with Dylan Behrens on the outside of that. 17th, he'll end as the final car on the lead lap. J.R. Houston, despite success early, falls out short late. 5 laps down, he is in 18th. Terry Brooks in the 23 car ends up 19th, and Connor Holden in the 81 for Swamp Motorsports, top 20 here at Richmond.
Final drivers in tonight's event include Matt Muir, Lucas Lodato, Mike Tellier, Seb Miller, and Kendall Kerr. 23rd on back, all retirees officially. Lodato able to come through 55 laps down, and Matt Muir 19 laps behind. With that being said, our top 3 drivers standing by with us here, and of course, the first of which to speak to will be our race winner. Let's get in the driver who gets it done again, season 18, and regardless of how long we've been going at it here in the Highline Racing League, Scott Zellner finds a way. And a 2-time champ is back in victory lane here in Virginia. Zellner, what a race that was. 44 laps led on the day. The checkered flag falling in hand for you the first time this season. And a fantastic way, of course, to open up the short track stretch of the campaign. Of course, 3 spread throughout the season. And to bring it back to Richmond and have such a great run. Fantastic for this entire number 2 team.
Yeah, it feels really good. I'm really glad that the randomizer tonight ended up with Richmond. That was definitely my preferred short track out of all of them. Don't really consider myself a short track racer. So, I mean, lucked out. There was a lot of yellows tonight. Pretty typical when we go to a short track. But it's, it is what it is. The racing that we did have was pretty good up front. Yeah, it just feels really good to get a win on the season and get it out early.
You mentioned getting this win so early in the campaign here at a track that proved tricky from the beginning. But let's talk about it from the start. Heat racing for the first time this season. We've done it before in this league, but it's been a little while since that point. You won your heat. That was the most important thing. Starting in third and getting a feel for the track in a short form race environment. Do you think those 20 laps at all influenced how you went about the main race?
Absolutely. Honestly, the best thing that came out of the heat races was giving me that number 2 pit stall. It was pretty much the number 1 pit stall because I think Alan had some issues. So I really wanted to dig hard in my heat race. I was able to pass Roberto pretty cleanly about like halfway through the heat race and able to set sail. I think that's been a struggle for me lately is qualifying. So I'm already starting, mid pack when we have 30 something guys. So just to claw my way to to a top 5 on a weekly basis is nice. But yeah, tonight with the heat race, it was definitely really important to get a good pit stall, get a good starting spot.
And eventually pit stops made all the difference for the drivers behind you. You got yourself up to the outside pole and you went from there. Yellow flags made up a majority of this race and short runs were especially frequent. Seems you had that short run speed built by the very end, and with the best restarts, seems like that's what kept you ahead of the likes of Winstead, Stagner, and the like. How important was it for you to optimize those restarts over everything else?
Yeah, those restarts were huge. It was really hard to launch if you weren't the control car. So there were a couple times where I was starting on the front row, but in second. And it seems like I was going into turn 1 with somebody on my outside almost every time. So restarting here was big, and it was really big to be the control car to get a good launch. Track was really slick tonight. I don't know if it's the update to the cars making everything. The wheels spun a lot more with this new iRacing update. So being in front was definitely a really important factor in getting the job done tonight.
Looks like tonight, track position sealing the deal. All things considered, the randomizer gave us a familiar track. I think for a lot of drivers, that was a saving grace. Now, up next on the campaign, we've got ourselves back to the unique tracks before heading back to a short track in 2 weeks' time. Nevertheless, the unique tracks are a variety of tracks, all completely different types and sizes. We've gone to one so far in Nashville, so with that in mind, there's a lot on the table here. Anything from an intermediate in Chicago to something like Pocono or Indianapolis in length. The wind's out of the way. That's the most important thing, and this schedule still remains unpredictable. How do you feel now, of course, looking at the rest of the season with a chance now to maybe add on to it with the first one out the way?
Well, definitely going to be trophy hunting this season. I'm going to be on vacation the next 2 weeks, so gonna miss the unique track, which is a bummer. I really like the group of tracks that the competition committee put together for the randomizer. Not necessarily disappointed I'm going to miss the short track the week after that. So I'm hoping that the randomizer next week gives them a track like Worldwide Technology that's not one of my stronger suits, and that we can save some good tracks for my style later on in the season when I'm here fighting for wins. But yeah, I really want to get to that 20th win this season, and I think we just have 2 to go. So look for the 2 car to get things done.
Getting close to, of course, even further breaking your own records, making your own history in this series. Scott Zellner, if you have any final shout-outs you'd like to give after tonight's victory, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I want to first of all dedicate that win to Caleb. Happy birthday! That was a good birthday present for the team to get a win at Four Horsemen. Thanks to the teammates, Scott Wheeler and Austin Bloom. Thanks to all my family at home watching. And thanks to FTN for broadcasting, and a big shout out to Westlake Building Supplies for sponsoring this league.
18th win in the books now for Scott Zellner, the all-time winningest driver, collects the checkered flag today from Richmond. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, David.
Now, with Zellner on the move, 2 more drivers we'd like to speak to, of course. First and foremost, second place finisher and still your championship leader, Kenneth. You're standing by now at the 64, DJ Stagner.
Another consistent finish for DJ Stagner. DJ, you were in hot pursuit of Scott Zellner. A unique way to get around this Richmond Raceway. Got you close. What was missing there in those final laps to get around Zellner?
Just didn't have enough time, didn't have enough grip in the tires. It was just, he did a really good job there getting everything his car had, because I was giving 110% and I just couldn't do it, couldn't set up a run. So shout out to Zellner there, because like I said, he executed that flawlessly. There was not even a bobble. So really good job by him.
But still a great race from you nonetheless here at Richmond. We know that there were a lot of cautions that came out over the course of the race, but the one common thread was that you were inside the top 5 and in contention for position. What was that like to tally amongst those others that were around you? We know that Chad Winstead was one of those to decide on 2 tires. You were a little more conservative with the 4-tire call. What was that like strategy-wise as you guys weaved into the end of that race, and how it set up for that final restart?
Yeah, it was a pretty just standard, clean, consistent day for me. There was not a whole lot of drama. The biggest scare of my race actually was my own teammate in the booth that was listening to me or talking to us decided to play a soundboard sound when we took the green, and I was second on the inside, and myself and Connor both missed a shift and about wrecked and lost a lot of spots. So that disaster restart for Swamp Motorsports, yeah, that was Ty Smith's fault. But it was funny though. It was kind of funny. We laughed. But yeah, it was just clean, smooth, consistent day. So no complaints, no issues, no anything really. Just looking forward to next week.
Debut of the heat racing format for tonight here at Richmond Raceway. You guys were able to get a taste of that for the first bit of the race. You started third in your heat. You ended up finishing in third. It seemed like it was clean and green, but how important was that heat race towards learning this track, getting some laps around, especially after practice, and just learning what it's like to be in a race environment before the feature?
I would say it was very important, because this track, it was very loose today. It did not drive how I would have expected normal Richmond to drive. So just having a little bit of extra acclimation, I would say, was generally a good thing. I like the format. The format tonight was pretty cool. I guess my one thing is, if I had to have a I don't know, a change, I would change the consolation LCQ to be a little shorter to give that a little bit more intensity. But other than that, I was a big fan of the format. So shout out to them for setting that thing up.
Well, it's another week, another second place finish, and this time you're going to be at the top of the standings once more heading into our next race, which should be a unique track. So, a lot of different venues that could host next week's race on September 12th. But, DJ, before we let you go on this runner up finish from the Commonwealth of Virginia, anybody in specific you want to shout out or thank?
Shout out to Zellner and JR Houston for racing clean, and Chad Thirdstead. He had a good race tonight. Shout out Connor. Connor had a really good race going for a while. I think he got crashed late. I don't even know what happened. Hadn't went back and looked at it. Not a shout out to Ty Smith. That guy's a moron. But anyway, we still like Ty. We're good. Anyway, yeah, it was a fun race. Good fun race. I enjoyed it. Had fun. Looking forward to next week.
Fun all around, some jokes along the way. DJ, we of course appreciate the time. Best of luck heading into the next week, but congratulations on the second place finish tonight from Richmond.
All right, thank you.
DJ Stagner, David, finishing P2 here in Virginia.
And DJ able to, of course, once again come up with a podium finish. He's been the most consistent of which so far. And then we have, of course, defending champion Chad Winstead. Kenneth once again stopping by the broadcast booth. It's the number one who finishes third.
Well, here's Chad Winstead. Man, the call almost worked. You had the riskiest call near the end of that race. 2 tires and a 9.2 second pit stop. What went behind that call in your pursuit for the race lead? And talk to us about how that went for you. What was going right? What was going wrong in that end of the race situation?
Yeah, well, I knew I needed to give myself a chance to get the win, and I wasn't going to do it from ninth. I was sitting in ninth, couldn't really pass anybody. Felt like I was the faster car than a few of the guys in front of me, and just couldn't make headway. I knew 4 tires wasn't going to do it, so just had to do something different and do something bold to get up there. The car, I knew, didn't really wear the left sides very much on that first little run we had, so I kept an eye on that and just hoped that it would stick. And unfortunately, Zellner got in there on my right rear, couldn't quite hold him off and get clear. I think if I could have, I might have had something a little bit for him, or maybe could have held on the second, but overall, just knew I had to do something to get back on the podium.
And about this Richmond Raceway, not the hottest track temp we've seen, so probably not the slickest track, but we did see a ton of drivers get sideways off the corners and some trouble along the way. For you, how was the car responding to not only that 2-tire call, but just throughout the race on the short runs and as those yellows were flying throughout?
Yeah, it was a weird start. I didn't get in and get much practice. I got home late and only got to run about 10 laps of practice, and it didn't feel like Richmond typically feels with these cars. I don't know if it was the update or track temperatures or what was going on, but it was just very slick. Felt like I couldn't put the power down even though the track temperature wasn't high. It was just really hard to put the power down and get some grip. And I think taking it easy on those first part of the runs and letting the car kind of come to you to be able to put some of the power down and was key. And I learned a lot over the course of that race. I wish it was a little bit longer of a race. Might have had something. But overall, I'm happy to be up front again. I felt like last week I had a top 3 car, was dodging a wreck there at the very end of the race. Probably going to be on the podium, and I drive through the grass and my left front suspension blows up, and it's just kind of bad luck every season. I have like that one race where bad luck bites me, and I should have had a really good finish. And just hopefully moving forward, this can kind of jumpstart that and rattle off some more top 3s like last year.
Well, this is your second top 5 of the season, following up after Nashville Superspeedway. We head to next week's action, where it's a whole host of venues that could host as the unique track category. What do you look forward to there about the selection of tracks, and what do you hope to be the venue that'll host the next race?
Yeah, I like some of the unique tracks. Honestly, I'm good wherever we run. I have fun just running good, clean races with these guys. I know tonight wasn't the best example. We had some issues last week, so I just want to get back to good green flag racing and racing each other hard and battling for the win. I want to be able to see a race play out and not everybody get angry with one another and beating and banging, taking each other out on cautions like we had last week. It's just, if we can get back to that good classic highline racing that we've had for so many seasons and get rid of some of the cautions, that's what I look forward to the most. And wherever we go, I'm cool with it. I want to be up front and contention for the win and get some good finishes again.
Well, we know that we're looking forward to seeing you take the action on the racetrack next week, whatever venue that may host that unique track category. We'll be excited to see it. Chad, on behalf of all of us here at FTN, congratulations on the top 3 finish. But before we let you go, anybody you want to give a shout out to or thank?
Yeah, I want to thank my teammate Adam Bossy. He is kind of the manager of the league these days and admin, and he puts a lot into it and a lot of effort. And I know he wants to have a good product out there, and nights like tonight upset him, and I just want to give him a shout out. And he does a great job in trying to get this thing steered the right way. And it's always fun racing with him and the other QCR guys as well, Lucas and Jason tonight. And shout out to my wife and any friends and family that are out there watching, and appreciate you guys for putting on the broadcast. And hopefully we can we bring the number 1 car back in victory lane next week.
Well, Chad, we appreciate the time. Congratulations on the P3 effort here from Richmond Raceway, and we'll be sure to see you next week for one of those unique track races.
Appreciate you.
Chad Winstead in the number 60 machine getting to 3rd place at the end of this one here from Richmond Raceway.
And so now, Kenneth, we've heard from our top 3 drivers, and of course, Zellner, the man who gets it done. DJ Stagner 2nd, Chad Winstead in 3rd from a hectic night from the Richmond Raceway. Introducing short track action here in Season 18, and a wonderful way to do it, with 25 drivers making it to our main event, but of course there could only be one. And Zellner, now with 18 career victories, just continue to add on to his own legacy as the top driver when it comes to those victories, and still keeping himself in early contention, although he will be missing the next 2 events in the championship picture. So not much will change in the title fight. It'll be Zellner and Stagner, of course, the drivers to look out for. Zellner still chasing victories. Stagner up and ahead in the points battle by a wider and wider margin week after week. And before we head to our next circuit, which is in the unique category of our schedule randomizer, you have any final thoughts that you'd like to wrap out here with, Kenneth?
Well, I'd say that it was a lot of physicality, or there was a lot of physicality tonight from Richmond Raceway, but what you said about Zellner is certainly correct, and this is my first race broadcasting the Highline Racing League, but seeing how composed and quick and consistent Scott Zellner was over this race demonstrated a winning car and a winning race pace. So for Zellner, just handled business in the end of that one and was able to get that victory. For the unique track combo that we may see next week, you've got a lot of tracks that can wear out the tires and wear them out very quickly. We've already seen Nashville SuperSpeedway take host to a race this season. That was race number 2. But what do we see out of those other tracks that may be in there? A Chicagoland, a Darlington, maybe even a Homestead in Miami. So many different venues that could take some drivers for a whirl, may be the positive for some guys. You may not know, but for right now, really close in the championship and really great racing overall. Can't wait to see what happens next week.
And I think Chad Winstead put it best. The way we've had racing season after season, year after year, that classic Highline Racing action, that's what we're expecting when we go back to the unique tracks that we're due to see race after race, week after week. Richmond, familiar, and hopefully we see something exciting on the same level of Richmond, maybe a little bit cleaner wherever we go for our next event on the campaign. Once again, for the viewers watching at home, every Thursday night starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, you can catch the Highline Racing League action here, the Premier Series, as a schedule randomized for the first time in league history. So tonight, our first of 3 short track blocks, and we'll go to our second unique track block on the season next week, September 12th. Additionally, Kenneth, who was able to commentate with us, doing a wonderful job in his first time here in the Highline Racing League booth, will be back next Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern, with the Road to Pro qualifying series as the championship continues to Rockingham, the penultimate race of the 2024 season as well. Thank you all for tuning in live on FTN. I've been David Kreutz producing, alongside Kenneth Bueno, bringing additional commentary, and the Westlake Royal Building Products Premier Series in Race 4 of Season 18. From the virtual Richmond Raceway, you've been watching FTN Broadcasting. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel. Love to have you here back next Thursday, where we'll have 3 broadcasts, Iora, Road to Pro, and the Highline Racing League, all at once. If you'd like to join the action you're seeing here on your screen, scan the QR code for the official FTN Broadcasting Discord server, and you too can become a driver in any of the FTN broadcasted leagues we cover from Monday to Sunday and everywhere in between. Thank you once again for tuning in and watching our coverage tonight of the Highline Racing League's PaperCLIP 100. Hope you have a fantastic night.